Sponsored by Tasty Minstrel Games. Make sure Epic Gaming Night is sponsored by Tasty Minstrel Games. Make sure to check out the Tasty Minstrel podcast on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. This podcast is made possible by the support of patrons like you. Thanks for your support. Welcome to the Epic Gaming Night podcast, a podcast about the stories and relationships board games create. I'm your host, Roy Kennedy, and with me as always is Rob.
Hello, everybody.
And we have a special guest today, JJ, the owner of Atomic Empire. How's it going?
Hey, great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I'm super stoked to have you on the show. Atomic Empire is a not-so-local friendly game store to us because we're in Winston-Salem and Atomic Empire is over in Durham, but it's worth the drive. So
it is.
Super excited to have JJ on. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and how you got into gaming?
Sure. I'm JJ, and, let's see, what do I do? Wow, I'm mainly an administrator. By training, I'm a computer science major, and I write code. I'm a software developer, but in the end, it turns out that I mostly herd all the cats and make sure that stuff gets done so the game store can run. So I, am partly involved in ordering product, setting up events, communicating with customers, managing HR and all of the various complexities of having 20-plus employees and all of that. And how I got into gaming. My parents were board gamers, and board gaming was a staple throughout my childhood. And once we were in high school, we discovered, Euro games, games that don't feature player elimination and have a little more legs. Board gaming just became the family pastime all the time.
Nice. Cool. So you got in through board games. Was there a specific game that was the starter for your gaming stuff?
Early on it was stuff you could get at big box stores. So we did a lot of Monopoly. My dad is a killer Monopoly player. He will talk you out of Boardwalk every time, and I don't understand how he does it. And
do you guys do those crazy deals that aren't in the rules for Monopoly, or do you just play standard Monopoly?
I don't even know, because I don't know that I've ever read the rule book. I just always played it the way my dad played it. But
okay.
But he played fast and loose.
Okay.
And I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Solar Quest, which is like Monopoly of the planets, except that you can get stuck in orbit around Saturn for your entire life.
Nice.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Is that better or worse than Monopoly? I'm not sure.
It's better because you get to learn all the moons.
Oh, that's cool.
And
is Titan a moon though?
What's that?
Is Titan a moon?
Yeah.
It's a moon of.
I know, but I think it should be a planet. That's just my own opinion.
Well,
wait.
Where do you stand on Pluto?
Pluto's a planet.
Okay.
I grew up with Pluto being a planet. I learned it in school. It's a planet. However, Titan though,
you can't say something that orbits another planet is a planet. Come on, Rob.
I think Titan is close enough. I think out of all the things in our solar system, that's the first place we would go for habitation.
That doesn't mean that it's a planet, though.
To me, it's bro. If you could live on it, it's a planet. I'm not living on a moon. I'm living on
semantics
planet,
about
Titan,
definitions.
Planet Newman.
I feel like we need to tap in Neil deGrasse Tyson in here or something. And
I got him on speed dial. I mean, we've had him on the podcast so many times.
Yeah, Neil and we go way back, and we fight about this constantly. He's like, "It's a moon." I'm like, "It's not." Regardless of all of his degrees and scientific background, I'm just stuck on it being a planet. Or how about this? I want it to be a planet. If you're going to take away Pluto from me, give me Titan. Right? Because my little girls are going to grow up thinking Pluto.
But it orbits. Okay, anyway, never mind. It would be awesome to have Neil deGrasse Tyson come on and talk about space games and how they're all not
wrong,
accurate at all. That would be fun.
How much fuel do you need to escape the orbit of Jupiter? I would like to ask him that. But so Fireball Island that they're now bringing back.
Yes.
J.R. Honeycutt's bringing that back. We played so much Fireball Island when I was a kid. So just all that basic stuff. And then when I got older, we discovered, sort of the normal gateway drugs to Eurogames, Settlers of Catan, Ticket to Ride, stuff like that, and sort of never looked back on that.
Sweet.
Awesome. So many awesome gateway games out there. Super great. So I guess we can go ahead and talk about some of the Atomic stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of Atomic Empire and how it started and how much it's grown?
Sure. Atomic started by accident, like so many things. When my then boyfriend lost his job in the tech crash in the Triangle in like 2002, I said, hey, why don't you sell some of those duplicate comic books you've been picking up on eBay? Because he had been buying big lots to fill small holes in his runs, and so we had like a ton of duplicates. I was like, why don't you get off the couch and sell some of those books on eBay? So I helped him. We put up like 100 auctions, and they went bonkers. So then we were like, oh well, let's drive to Baltimore tomorrow and buy this collection we found, and then piece that out and sell it. And then when we got done with that, we were like, well, there's this $20,000 collection in Atlanta, and we could pick that up. And around that time was when we said, we should just have a website because we're getting killed on eBay with the fees and the fact that people don't trust your grades and all of that. And so then we started developing a website, and then it was like, well, if we're going to sell used comics on our website, we should sell new comics on our website and have a subscription service. And then it was, well, the new comics distributor has a sister distributor that's in games, and we're huge gamers, and it sort of snowballed into this e-commerce website. And that was in like 2003 that we launched that. And Mark's my husband, and he had always had this dream of opening a brick and mortar game store, and I'm the practical one, so I had always told him that is not practical.
Let's sell comic books online instead.
Yeah, because there's no overhead, right?
That's exactly right.
And we were both working at the time, so it wasn't really in danger of becoming a permanent thing. I think we went about a year online before I quit to do that full time. And then in 2006, he was just looking at real estate all the time with his dream of opening a game store. And we found this little hole in the wall off the beaten path. It had been a hand-me-up store from Habitat for Humanity. It was Class C office space with damage on the inside. Everything was gross. And we were like, oh my God, it's perfect. So the rent was right. And we were like, this way we can just get in and open the doors and see how it goes without committing to a long lease or a lot of overhead.
Yeah.
So we were in that space as sci-fi genre comics and games from 2006 to 2012, at which point we had just outgrown the parking lot to such an extent that there was never anywhere to park.
Yeah.
And we moved down the street.
I remember going to sci-fi genre like way back in the day, which is kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm. So, and I'm sure that you remember it was a real hole in the wall.
Yeah. I think it was when I still lived like in like Virginia and stuff like that, so I wouldn't stop by like often, but I'd been there a couple times just being like, oh man, it's a game store, because if you're ever like driving around, you're like, oh man, what game stores are in the area? And sometimes it's just hard to find. Like there used to not be very good online resources about where to actually find different game stores, so it was cool to be able to say, hey, I've been to sci-fi genre when it wasn't Atomic Empire, so that's kind of cool.
And, we had this parking lot out back. So the parking lot in front was gravel, and it held about 8 cars. And then out back, there was this sort of, we eventually convinced the owner to clear all these like broken down old cars out of the lot in the back so that we could rent it. And it was basically a forest. And we dumped some gravel in the middle of it, and we made an auxiliary parking lot. But there was a 1-lane little dirt path to get in and out of it, and it was a complete cluster every time. So that I don't at all remember that fondly, but now it's just beginning to have that little bit of nostalgic, like, wow, remember when we were in that place where the plumbing never worked and there was no parking lot, and there was only one person at the counter on every shift because that was all we could afford.
Yeah. What was your main market back then?
Magic, 40K, sort of the same things that are our core market right now. Like, it took us a surprisingly long time to get Magic moving, but once it did, it really took off. And I feel like we had sort of a younger audience then. So a lot of the guys who are like mid-20s wargamers and Magic players now were our teenage wargamers and Magic players then.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? What inspired the new name Atomic Empire? Like, where did that come from? Was that just Was that a lost bet, or was that just like a favorite movie or something? Well, I mean, you go from that one sci-fi name, and then we're still in the sci-fi genre, but how did that come about? Why not keep the name with the new location?
Yeah, so when Mark first registered the sci-fi genre URL, he had this image of this vision of making a news website that sort of tied together all of the sort of geek-related news in not quite the way that sci-fi does now, SYFY, but like almost in a similar digesty kind of way, but much earlier than that. And so that was the URL we had, and it's the name we stuck on the online site when it sort of morphed from being a news site to an e-commerce website. But it never really described a store, and also nobody could pronounce it. So we got a lot of calls for Skiffy Genry.
Oh no!
Yeah, and like people would say, "That's really pretty. What language is that?" And we'd say, "Well, English, technically." So it didn't really seem, when we moved to Atomic, we knew we were moving into a strip mall. We were going to try to reach a much broader mainstream audience, and sticking it with a name like sci-fi genre that didn't really describe what we did, and also was hard to spell. Like we had to spell it phonetically every time when I was on the phone. Didn't really seem like a great business decision. So we just started a gigantic spreadsheet, and we put in every name we could possibly think of, and we started crossing out the ones that one person hated or somebody else hated. We got together in a big group of our friends and just brainstormed. And when we found one that we could purchase the URL and, we didn't hate it right off the top, and we thought it had a ring to it, we settled on it.
Nice.
I love it. I just wanted to know the history, because I mean, you created a brand in one place, and to change a name, I mean, it's kind of a big step. So
we're not the smartest. Like we had someone come in and say, "I knew a motorcycle shop once that moved. It was a really successful shop, and they moved to change their name at the same time, and they were gone 2 years later." And I was like, "Well, I hope that's not us. Thanks for coming in."
That's rough. Yeah. That's awesome though. But yeah, so how did the fandom or the events and things like that grow in the store as you guys were moving locations and starting off and everything like that?
Like anything else, you just start with what you have, and what you need is a few really dedicated players. Like if you want to make Magic go, which it wasn't going at Sci-Fi at first, you need 2 or 3 people who will show up every Friday night, rain or shine, no matter what's going on, so that when that random person walks in who doesn't know you, there's somebody there to play with. And I feel like all gaming groups are the same way. If you have 2 or 3 dedicated people who are going to be there to show other people a good time, then things just begin to start to slowly get some traction until they're moving under their own critical mass. And then things kind of can explode on you. And the same way, if you lose those core organizers, you definitely risk those communities diminishing as they sort of lack that central core of people who are going to make it go.
Yep.
Nice. How can a store like cultivate, I guess, these like leaders in these different games? Is there like a specific way, or is it just having the stuff and product and having good customer service so that those people want to come back? Or
part of it's luck. Having somebody who's local to your shop who wants to do that kind of thing. I mean, we've been extremely lucky with the organizers that we've met who've decided to invest their time in the store. But I think that they're just speculating. I think that if you listen to those people and they say, "Hey, I want to run this kind of event," or "I wish you guys were doing this," then you just have to keep an open mind and say, "Okay, well, if that's what's going to make it work, how can we work that out?"
Gotcha. That's awesome. Cool. So I think we already covered pretty much what made you want to do a game store. But as far as like you personally, I know your husband always wanted to do a game store. So what was in it for you, like when the games were starting up, or like what was like your opinion of putting everything together to start actually doing games as well as comic books?
I definitely have a much greater interest area in games.
Gotcha.
So when we started talking about tacking games onto the comics business, I mean, the comics business, I enjoy comics, but it's not in my core interest area. I didn't know they were still publishing comics when I met my husband. I was like, what do you mean you're buying comics? Like, old books? And he says, no, they come out weekly. I said, that's impossible.
Didn't that bubble burst? Come on, man.
Yeah, I didn't even know they were publishing comics in the 90s. I somehow completely missed out on comics. I thought this was a thing that was done in the 60s. So when we started talking about adding games, I was already a huge board gamer. I mean, we were going to Dragon Con every year. We'd been to Gen Con. Like, that was much more interesting to me.
That's awesome.
But I still never sort of imagined myself running a retail store. Like, that was never in my plan. So it's just been kind of an adventure, you know. They say that life is what happens when you're making other plans. And we've just kind of embraced opportunities that became available and tried to go with the flow, you know, and not think too hard.
So you seem like like you've got your stuff together. You know, don't take this the wrong way, but like you sound very analytical. Like you have everything planned, you have everything set up. You're that type of person. Was it the numbers off of the success from the online sales from the comics and any other activity that pushed you over to go ahead and try the brick and mortar? Or how hard of a leap of faith was that for you? Like, was that extremely unnerving for you? Or were you just like, you know what, let's just do this. What do we got to lose? Like, because from what you talked about with your background, with your writing code and just the way that you're speaking now and presenting yourself now, you seem somebody who's just like, you know what's going on, you have your day planned, and to make a big jump like this, like, I imagine it was very tough on you. Like, what was it that pushed you over the edge to make that jump?
I think that's really insightful. I think you've described me pretty well. That's very charitable, because the way I say it is that Mark is the visionary and I'm the bean counter. I make sure that all the beans are in the right buckets. But, you know, I think that is a combination of things. One, I knew that we were young enough that we could recover from a financial disaster or a failed business. And we definitely had conversations where I said, well, assuming we tank this, which we probably will, I figure that a failed startup is pretty good on your resume at this point in time. So I thought we could rebuild from that. But also Mark's enthusiasm, if you haven't met him, but he is a really difficult guy to say no to, and he will convince you if you let him. So, you know,
and that's why you guys are married?
It is, yeah. No.
You just kept on trying.
No. Mary, okay,
He's very convincing.
Yeah.
But, you know, we would sit down and I'd say, okay, here are the things that I need to be confident in this decision so that we can go ahead and take these risks and whatnot. And I think that it was a sort of right place, right time for me, because the lure of working for yourself, of sort of being in charge of your own destiny, is very strong, even for me. Yeah. And to me, it was worth some financial risk to make Mark's dreams come true, but also my dreams of being kind of independent.
That's awesome.
It is awesome.
What would you say sets Atomic Empire apart from other, like, from the local game stores or other game stores? Is there anything you guys do different, or is it just trying to make sure everything's in the right place?
You know, every game store has a different struggle. And we've been very lucky. We've been relatively isolated. We don't have 4 other stores competing within 3 blocks of us. So it'd be hard for me to say, oh, here's why we're successful when other stores aren't. But I know that we've always approached it as sort of a service-based business instead of strictly retail. And we feel like the experience that we provide is what brings people in the door. We know that stuff is cheaper on Amazon. Like, that's not a secret. So what can we do to make it worth people's while to come out here and buy things from us and support our business? So we've always sort of approached it as, what's that value add that we bring to the table that's going to make somebody come here instead?
Perfect. That is the best answer, because somebody who's also in retail but mostly service-based business, that's the answer. From my experience watching other people with their businesses succeed, is making about service rather than just the product. So yeah, wonderful answer.
So what you're saying, Rob, is you got to have that wine and cheese experience for the open house.
Right? No. But I mean, you have to be able to. How many game stores have you gone into and nobody talks to you?
Too many, and it's really sad.
They don't make it about service. They just make it, here's my product. I'm kind of an introvert. Don't talk to me. Look at my product. If you buy something, great. If you don't, okay. But if you make it a service-based, if you do something where that's going to set you apart and you make it about me and my experience, that's going to make me want to invest more. And yeah, I can buy it more on Amazon, but I'd rather go to the spot where, not that we're going to be best friends at the end of the day, but like, okay, I'm going to know JJ. I'm going to know Mark. Like, okay, here's where we do our stuff. And so to do it on a service base, I mean, when I came from Arkansas, the only reason I kept going to that one store, Might As Well Games, was because of the service. I knew the guys. They knew me. We developed a relationship because when I came in, they said hello. They interacted. They asked me questions. It wasn't just buy my product. And I think that's another reason why, since you guys started in '06 and then you jumped to the newer location in 2012, you're still around. I mean, we've had here in Winston in the past 3 years, 2 or 3 game stores open and already closed. They just haven't been able to cut it. But also, I've been to those stores, and Roy can attest to this, and we won't necessarily say their names, but they weren't service-based. You'd walk in, and they'd tell you, we have Destiny stuff, and then that's it. I don't care about Destiny. Anyway, I appreciate hearing that from a business store. I'm not trying to blow smoke up your butt or anything like that, but like from a consumer who spends a lot of money on this kind of stuff, I want that experience. And so it's good to hear that that's your philosophy as well.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because it's customers like you who are looking for that experience who keep businesses like us in business. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I worked in retail at Target for like 10 years, and it's kind of funny because even though Target's like this big box, whatever, they're still trying to like push and create an experience of like, hey, ask them if you can help them find something, ask them what else they're looking for, make sure to like interact with anybody you see. Now, how much that follows through when you're like a big box chain, that's completely different. But I feel like on a game store level, and since everybody there pretty much loves games, it should be decently easy to be like, hey, what games are you into? Like, why are you here? Oh, did you hear we had these events? Oh, did you have you seen this new game from that product line that you said that you're interested in? I mean, you can build relationships, and if you build relationships with people that want to come back,
Yep.
We're preaching to you about your game store. No, I'm just kidding.
We're basically saying just keep doing what you're doing.
That's great to hear. Although I'm also obviously curious what we should be doing that we're not.
You should be doing a Song of Ice and Fire tournaments.
We are. Didn't I tell you? We're definitely doing that.
Yes. I mean, it is a drive for us, but I have made that drive before, and I'll be happy to make it again. No, I mean, I love...
You should open a second location in Winston-Salem. No, I'm just kidding.
Bro, I actually had a conversation with somebody today about opening up a game store in Winston-Salem.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, I'm not in any position financially right now to make that commitment. But I brought up Atomic Empire. I was like, well, if we did it, we'd have to have a cafe, some type of food court. Not a court, but I mean, you guys offer food. We'd have to have a play area. And I even said, hey, we should do something with comics and art as well as board games like they do at Atomic Empire in Raleigh because they have a lot of success. The place is always packed out. So
you guys are basically like the nerd haven. Like if there's anything geeky, you guys have it on the shelf pretty much, right?
Or you can order it.
That was our image when we started, is there aren't a lot of people who combine the comics and the games, but we thought, well, why would you need to go 2 places for these things? Let's just do everything.
I mean, you guys got like even like the pops and like the fandom stuff and plushes and like basically anything that's like that nerdy type thing that people would be into. It's like, you can come here and check it out.
Well, what sets Atomic apart for me is the size. And size doesn't always matter, but I think for what you're trying to do, it does. Because you can do all of that, have your retail, and you can host events. Like I've gone to other stores where they had to do events off-site, right? Because their store couldn't hold it. And what a killer to your business to try to have to haul your load over to try to sell stuff for X event. Because you can't support that on site. And so to me, that's what I loved. I remember the first time coming in, I even told Roy, I was like, oh man, this reminds me of Might As Well, which was a store back in Arkansas. They were an old Walmart. They bought an old Walmart. Now this was like Walmart before it was a super center. So it was a small, but still they had a ton of tables and they were able to do everything like you guys were able to do, or like you guys are currently doing. So to me, that's the big thing, is the events.
That was one of the next things I wanted to ask you is how important do you think running events is at a game store?
I mean, I think that you guys have hit on it already, that it's extremely important, because otherwise you're just a store selling stuff and there's no real reason for somebody to choose you over a target, or wait 2 days to get it online or what have you. So I think that for us definitely wanting to open a game store, it was about the events because we wanted to see communities come together and support that. And we get to do like a lot of wacky events here that you don't sort of think of when you think about the tournament scene. Like we host the Game Designers of North Carolina when they come out and do play testing, and they have their meetings. We have a writers workshop that meets here. We have a lot of local RPG groups that decide to meet here instead of their houses, and it's just fun to see people coming out and sharing something like that. And I think that does translate to sales, not just of concessions, because it is convenient. People are here and they buy a beer or what have you, but when people are enthusiastic about something and they share that enthusiasm with other people, that's how you sort of build these communities, and then that in turn builds sales sort of naturally.
Oh yeah. And it also doesn't help where, like the last Rune Wars tournament, I went to your store. I didn't know if I needed another crossbowman, and you guys had it on the shelf. And before the tournament got started, I was like, all right, I might as well just buy it and add them into my army. So that is also nice when you are doing the events that you have the product on site that, that consumer can just pick it up rather than. It's very tempting. It's bad for me, good for you, but it's like very tempting when you see that product there and you're like,
or you lose and then you just go buy a whole different army or something like that.
Yeah.
I've actually seen people do that after certain tournaments. They'd be like, "Oh, you're picking up the elves now. That's crazy." Got stacks of elves.
Well, when you get run over by the elves, or that new faction, the red hermit crab guys.
Hey, we're not going to talk about the Uthukulon. Come on.
Yeah. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, when the hermit crabs come after you and they just hit for days, it's like, okay, I need to change something here.
People do that with their Magic decks all the time too. People will lose a tournament and say, "All right, I'm selling off all the cards in this deck. Tell me what to buy next."
Yeah.
Nice.
I did that.
So
I've done that twice, actually.
So what goes into the decision of what products and games you guys carry?
It's kind of a mosh. On the sort of leading edge of that, Shane and I get new product solicitations, and we put our heads together. We might each write a number down and then flip them over and see how close we are. How much of this do we want to bring in? But community buzz has a huge impact on that. So we might hear about something first and say, "Oh, we don't think this is going to be a big deal," or whatever. And then we hear a bunch of players talking about it, expressing excitement. We'll get Song of Ice and Fire. Now I'm thinking, gosh, I should go up my pre-orders on that. And so we use that community buzz to kind of inform those decisions. And then we start to collect some pre-orders. And if pre-orders look like they're going pretty well, we might bring in some extra product. But there are so many games out there right now, and so many of them are big miniatures games or things that have a lot of SKUs. You just can't possibly carry them all. And so you kind of have to make decisions about, I think my community is going to break this way or that way. And sometimes you're wrong. Like we went in really big on Legion, thinking, gosh, it's a Star Wars game. It's going to be skirmishy. This should be really good. And the community was like, and now we're sitting on a bunch of that. So other things we underestimate and they go bonkers. So it's a lot of guessing and a lot of sort of feeling out the community and kind of crossing your fingers.
Did you play Legion?
I did not. My husband did really briefly.
Did he like it?
I don't know. He definitely didn't love it.
I want to love Legion. I love the IP. I love the idea of Rune Wars or Game of Thrones, but as Star Wars. Like it should work. But I know Roy played the demo, and some of the cards and the way that you do some of your attacking, and then just some other reviews I saw from other people online, it just didn't do it for me. And I was hoping, I even told Roy, Legion is going to be the Rune Wars killer. Like Legion's going to come out, it's going to go huge. But I don't know. I think they pushed too far and tried to do some new mechanics that just didn't mesh well with people.
New mechanics.
Well, why not keep with the whole Battle Lore Rune Wars system? Like, why does Fantasy Flight change that? Like, why do the cards with the commander card and your units have to be so close to your commander so they can play a card? Why not just do the initiative dials?
I about to say, I think the initiative dials for Rune Wars have like ruined every other miniatures game for me. Because now
one
if
of the
I
few
just
things I
just
like about
move
Rune Wars.
I just move people up and then roll dice, it doesn't feel the same as, because I mean, I know in the last game I played JJ, the whole mind games around that initiative is so much fun.
Yeah, but I don't know.
You know, this bridges really easily into why Rune Wars is underrated, which
Yeah.
I know is on Roy's topic list, because it's interesting. You look at Rune Wars, and why didn't they just use that mechanic for Legion? Because it's such a good mechanic. But we hear like serious war games players all the time say, "Oh, it's not really a war game because it's got the dials."
That's
So I
crazy.
wonder if they were looking at feedback like that. Like, it's been really hard to get Warhammer Fantasy players into Rune Wars, even though it should be a really easy sell.
Oh yeah.
Because in my opinion, it's a better game, and it's just as pretty. But apparently, the dials make it a board game, and they don't want to touch it. And so, I think that you're dealing with like some premeditated or some prejudices in the community about what does and does not make a miniatures game, and I think they're trying to ride that line a little bit more with Legion.
Oh, interesting. Gotcha. So they try to lump it in more with like, oh, this is X-Wing, which isn't really a miniatures game, but I mean,
Right?
who
because
doesn't
they've been
call
saying about
X-Wing
that.
a miniatures game? Come on.
They've been saying that about X-Wing from the beginning. Oh, this is just a board game with ships, and it's not really a hobby game or whatever. And I think that Rune Wars got lumped into that too. And with Legion, I think that they wanted to make it a little bit more like 40K, where you don't have the trays, you got individual bases, and these loosely collected units, and they were sort of chasing that feel.
Yeah. I'm weird. I don't like defense dice in games. I like to like roll my attack, and if I roll good, then it sticks. And Legion has the whole like attack and defense dice, which Rune Wars doesn't. I like it's like, oh man, if I roll a bunch of hits,
so weird.
I get a bunch of hits.
Like,
I know
you would
I'm
train
weird.
an army and not teach them to put up their shields. That's so
They already
crazy
have
to
defense.
me.
They have their shields already.
And if they play Shield Wall, they get to put up their shields. You just tap the card, and then
They get more
you're
shields.
more shields.
I don't know. To me, it makes sense. Like, okay, you're
I mean,
attacking
it makes
me.
sense. I'm just saying.
I should have a chance to defend myself.
But it does. I mean, my problem with 40K is it does lead to this sequence of rolls. Like, pretty soon you feel like you've made 4 rolls to do one attack, and it just, to me, it bogs down the pace of the game. Whereas I feel like Rune Wars, especially after you get things dialed in, the play is sort of fast and furious.
Yeah. I
I don't think you can compare the two. I mean, I think definitely Rune Wars is definitely more streamlined and a lot easier to play compared to 40K. I'm just tired, and it's gonna be a bad word, but I'm tired of all those ruler nerds who are just like
in
so
40K?
hardcore.
Yeah.
Yes, like nope, you are a millimeter off. Nope, not touch. It's touching the thing. Well, technically, it's standing over it because it's on also this. I mean, come on, it's the dumbest thing ever. I had a huge IG army. After 2 months of playing, I sold it all off. I'd rather play a game like Rune Wars than I would ever like a 40K. I want to love 40K, but I'm happy with the way that miniature gaming is going, at least from like the newer games that come out, like a Rune Wars game, even like a Legion game where you don't have to take it so seriously. You already have the predetermined measurements, with those sticks and things like that. It's not so anal. I don't know.
I would agree. I like the movement templates. I think it makes it sort of cut and dry.
Yeah, you can do it or you can't do it, but it's not this measurement thing and ruler thing. I mean, that doesn't bother me if we're just playing casually, but I've gone to tournaments, and it sounds like you may have done some tournament play for 40K as well, where people will really break down, and you will spend the next 20 plus minutes talking about, one, is this die tilted too much this way? Or two, is it technically touching? If it's touching, it's touching. Like, I don't know. I just got tired of that. And so I like the simpler format and these newer games. And I think that's one of the things that's exciting about the gaming industry right now is we're seeing where they're taking a fantastic product and they're simplifying it and they're making it more mainstream.
Yeah,
right?
it's more approachable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If I were to try to tell somebody to play 40K versus Rune Wars, who's maybe a board gamer, right, but never touched miniatures before, unless that person was just like hardcore into such and such fantasy or whatever, I would definitely go Rune Wars first. It's easy to teach. It's more approachable. It's not threatening, but.
And I think it's interesting because, the sort of hardcore wargamers are scoffing at Rune Wars as being too simplified on that level. But at the same time, I feel like what Rune Wars does is it takes the guesswork out of the actual movement, and it moves it all to the psychological game of what is the other guy going to do, which to me is a much more interesting game. Trying to anticipate what my opponent is going to dial in on his dials and whether he's going to hold back or charge, and what that means for my turn. I feel like that's a much more interesting dilemma than trying to guess, is that 6 inches away or not.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I love that, but the fact that I have to spend a whole turn to turn left.
Rob just not. I mean, honestly, if you get good at the templates, like, it makes it a lot easier, and it makes it super interesting because you're like, okay, what's going on? I feel like at this point I'm starting to get better at the templates. I know JJ and the crew there has played way more, so they're like super good at moving exactly where they want to go.
Oh man, I can beach a cavalry on some terrain every time. I finally started putting wind rune on my cavalry just so I wouldn't get them stuck on terrain.
That's the most frustrating thing ever. And then you only have 8 rounds, and I like to play with the humans a lot. So I play with the Dakan, and I like the rune golems because they look just amazing, right?
But everybody hates the rune golems because that's their weakness, is that they can't move.
Right? I'm going to spend a whole turn to turn left. To then my next turn, but when I turn and move, you're also turning a move, so my degree of left or right is now off. That to me, that's why, again, A Song of Ice and Fire has moved up. I like the dial. I do like the psychology behind Rune Wars. I think that's a lot of fun, but the movement and the other stuff I like better on Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire. You'll have to get it, JJ. I'll have to come play you guys.
Yes, please come out and play.
What was I going to say? So do you think the fact that Fantasy Flight is still putting out units and things for this game, do you think that the hype will slowly start to drum up more? And I mean, I feel like everybody... I mean, I went to Gen Con, and I was joking around with people being like, oh man, I hope they announce more for Rune Wars, or I'm super excited about all the new stuff they have in the case for Rune Wars. It looks amazing, even though I'm the only person that likes it. And they're like, yep, you're the only person that likes it. But I'm like, but you should play because it's amazing. It's really good. But yeah,
I hope we begin to see some more momentum for the game. I really think that that the slow release of units at the beginning didn't help it get traction, and then I think it. I mean, my personal theory that's been unconfirmed is that it really got slowed down for the Legion release. Those facilities and that capital went into producing Legion, and now all of a sudden, like, the floodgates are open. We're seeing a bunch of spoilers and releases for Rune Wars. I hope that's going to breathe some life into the game.
Well, also because Legion is doing so bad for them. I mean, Legion did not pick up.
There were a lot of people playing it at Gen Con, but, I mean, seeing that it's a Star Wars game.
Yeah.
And they're only playing it at Gen Con. I follow a lot of board game personalities online, and I'll still see people like Roy and sometimes even Sam and some other people post Rune War stuff. A month or, let's say 60 days after Legion released, I'm not seeing any more pictures of anybody painting Legion, playing Legion, nothing. I think that was a major flop for them. And I 100% agree with you that they slowed down Rune Wars. And now that's why you're seeing that big revamping, because it's like, oh, crap, what should have been our moneymaker, what should have been our Rune Wars killer is actually dying on its own. So let's pump what's actually being semi-profitable right now.
Well, and my hope is that Rune Wars is a cheap game for them to make overall because they don't have to pay a license on it. So there's almost no reason for them not to continue developing on it for the time being, because they've already invested the time and money in getting the game going and coming up with the rule set.
I just think the rule set's solid, and that's why I like it. And I just like crazy fantasy monsters. That's the reason that I'm like, yes, Game of Thrones needs some more of those dragons and White Walkers in there.
It's coming, man. They just announced the giants for the wildlings.
I know.
It's coming.
I was literally fussing at the Cool Mini or Not guys, being like, dude, I'll be in when the White Walkers come in. I can play the undead in Game of Thrones and with all these crazy like demon White Walkers guys. I'm like, I'll play it at a CMON Expo with you guys. And they're like, okay, cool. Like, almost admission, but not quite a mission.
You know that zombies are going to win in the end anyway, right? I mean, that would be the faction to play.
There you go. I mean, and I play undead in Rune Wars already, so I'm like, why not play undead in that game also? So
yeah,
to my detriment, seeing that everybody smashes me every time, it's fine. I'll play the weakest faction. Someday we'll get our good units and be able to kill somebody.
They're coming.
You gotta get better with your archers, man. I think because every time I play you, that's your most underutilized unit, and I'm like, you could do so much more.
JJ, last time I went, it was just archers. That's all I played. It didn't work out very well for me. Hey, but my worms did catch some of your guys, so I was happy about that. I was happy listening to the Initiative 1 podcast after that. They're like, Roy actually caught some of JJ's units. I'm like, yeah, I did something, and then got murdered. But I did something good.
Well, you weren't alone. The Uthuk murdered a lot of people in that tournament between me and Josh.
Oh, gross. Good times. Cool. Well, getting back to Atomic, how important would you say online sales are to Atomic Empire?
They're really important. I mean, our roots are in the e-commerce website, and though the store has really come into its own and picked up, at first it was the website supporting the store so that we could afford to open the store. And that's not the case anymore. The store has really come into its own and is self-supporting. But the website gives us, and e-commerce in general, between eBay and TCG Player and other outlets we have, it gives us the opportunity to move dead stock a lot more easily. So we can liquidate more easily online. And also, the fact that some product lines are supported by online sales allows us to bring more variety and diversity into the store. So something that may not be selling bonkers in the store, like some of the action figures and stuff that you noted, we can afford to have them on the shelf because they will sell online. And so it just allows us to bring in a wider variety of product.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. Yeah. The other question I have is with so many people who are all like, oh man, I want to start a game store. I feel like every gamer that doesn't have like a good game store in their community is like, oh man, I should start a game store. Would you have any tips for people that are actually serious about like trying to like put a game store together or start something to make it actually successful?
So I have to be honest that my first piece of advice for anybody who says they want to open a game store is not to do it. There are a lot of good game stores out there, and you're probably, it depends on what you want to get out of having a game store, right? If you're looking for someplace where you'll be happy playing and you'll be comfortable and they'll have the stuff that you want to see on the shelf, then I would say get together with somebody who's running a pretty decent shop in your area and talk to them about how they can make it better. You could become an investor or even just become an advisor and a community organizer and stuff like that at that level. But if you're like, nope, I'm going to own a game store, then I think that really the trick is to start with lots of capital. It was much more expensive to open a store than we anticipated it would be. There's no way I would start with less than probably $50,000, but I think that 100 would really be preferable, and that's even assuming that your space is already kind of taken care of, that it's serviceable the way it is, and you don't have to do a lot of upfit. So the thing is that people think they can open a game store with nothing on the shelf because they'll get people to special order stuff, and they're mainly opening a play space because they want to play with their friends and whatnot. But if people are going to wait to special order it through you, they can get it online faster. And so and people have learned that if they walk into a store and there's nothing on the shelf, that store is probably not going to make it, and it's not a good idea to get really emotionally invested in it. So I just think that having that stuff to, first to get your space well lit and clean and welcoming, and then to have product on the shelves on day one are both things that you can't really do without.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've had so many game stores that pop up that I'm like, new game store in town, yes, awesome. Go in there, and they don't really have a whole lot of product, or like, because I have so many board games and so much stuff. It has to be like the brand new thing. They have to get the brand new thing right when it comes out for people to actually be excited about it, because they already have most of like the gateway games if they're like in the hobby. It's like I don't need another copy of Settlers of Catan. I've played Settlers of Catan. It'd be really cool to see like the brand new thing that just came out. So then you ask them to order that, and half the time it's like, okay, cool, we'll order it, and then they end up putting it on the shelf without calling you, or they just don't have all their things in the right way to like manage it. And it's like, well, I went through all this struggle. I could have just like ordered it and had it like way earlier. I was trying to help you guys out, but it's awesome to go into a store like Atomic, where it's like you guys always have the fresh new thing that's there. Like the first day it comes out, it's like, oh man. And if it's not on the shelf, normally if you ask them, you guys got a bunch in the back. It's like, oh, we sold it. Here, we got like 5 more in the back. Here, we'll put more out.
Yeah, either we have it or we're embarrassed that we don't have it. Sometimes that's the deal.
Yeah.
But
you already sold through all of it because you did have it.
Right. And then, one of the other mistakes I think that people make when they decide to open a game store is they think they can be the only employee. And that, to me, that's just a guaranteed burnout mechanism.
Absolutely.
Because game stores are open a lot of hours. You're going to be open relatively early in the day if you're going to be successful, and then you're going to be there until midnight. And there's only so many hours that one person can work. So if your business plan doesn't include some money up front for some extra help, I think that's just kind of a recipe for being really miserable all the time.
Yep.
And so that kind of also goes into like how much starting capital you want to have, because most new businesses are going to lose money for 3 to 5 years. So it's not going to be a matter of getting to break even in a year. You're going to want to have enough set aside that you are comfortable with losing money for that kind of time period.
Yeah. And I mean, so many of these people are like, I want to make a game store so I have a place to play. And then they're there all the time. And it's like, okay, I'll play the games. And you're like, wait, what about the customer service? Anyway.
Yeah, or you never get to play. And then you start
Right.
asking yourself why you opened a game store in the first place.
It's like, man, I could just have people over to my house and then I could play games.
Exactly.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we already know that you crush in Rune Wars.
That may be an exaggeration, but continue.
Who won our, what was it, regionals or whatever that we had?
I did win regionals, but only because Shane made me a bonkers list.
Nice. So with all the tons of events and tournaments that you've been a part of, what are some of the games that you've played that personally stood out to you?
Number one has to be Dreamblade. I don't know if you guys remember this game. It was a 2006 Wizards of the Coast collectible miniatures game.
With all the crazy, weird-looking miniatures, right?
Right, because the whole idea was that it was like an alternate dream dimension. It's sort of like Malifaux, but in plastic. And it was sort of like Rune Wars, in which the mechanics of playing the game were relatively simple, but the head game behind it was more like chess than it is with a lot of miniatures games.
Oh, nice.
And so it was a bunch of planning a couple moves ahead, doing dice averages in your head to figure out what was going to happen on those turns, what your opponent was going to do. And it sort of had a massive marketing failure because it was $15 for a booster box. So draft was really expensive.
Oh, dag, yeah.
Sealed and draft were crazy expensive. And without limited formats, it's really hard for collectible games to be successful. But Shane and I traveled all over. We went to 10Ks and we went to Worlds and stuff, and we just had such a good time meeting the people who were really good at that game and playing in that sort of set of people. That was banner stuff for us. Since then, we've been really into Netrunner, which again is a head game. It's
sure.
about anticipating your opponent's moves, and the fact that Netrunner as a card game is asymmetrical. So when you play the runner, it's a completely different game than when you're playing the corp. I think that's really unique.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was way into Confrontation, which was a game out of Spain that was a pewter miniatures game at a skirmish level, and the models were just brilliant. Just nobody was doing anything like the kind of sculpting that they were doing, and the game was a lot of fun. So I would say those have been, besides Rune Wars, those have kind of been my mainline games.
Nice. With like all of your time in the industry, is there like a game that was like big or that you really enjoyed, even if it's like a board game or something that you would love to see come back that like kind of faded away?
I got to go back to Dreamblade on that one.
Yeah.
Because I think that the game had legs and the marketing was the failure. And every few years, we'll be sitting around having a beer and we'll say something like, we should buy that IP and turn it into like a cardboard token game or something like that.
Yeah.
Like the ideas were so good and the execution was good, and the medium, I think, failed them. And it seems like a missed opportunity to me.
That's crazy because one of my friends actually gave me a box of like the Dreamblade miniatures, but I never played the game. He didn't give me the rules, or I didn't actually look them up. I'm like, these are just crazy looking miniatures. That's awesome. So I have a box of Dreamblade stuff, but I have no idea how to actually play the game. I might actually have to look up rules online now.
Shane has put together sealed pools, so you should just come out and play sealed with us at some point.
Oh, nice. That's crazy. I'm sure I'll do great, seeing that you guys went to all these tournaments and stuff. You guys can just show me how to play.
Yeah, I think we're getting on 10 years ago now that game died, so I think we're going to be rusty.
Okay. That's what I'd have to hope for. We can level the playing field. Because, I mean, I never lose to you in games ever, JJ. Ever.
No, you've pretty much got me. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure every single time we played Rune Wars, you just crushed me. So it's fine.
See, I need to stop bringing in overpowered stuff.
I mean, what are you gonna say when you own a game store and own the good faction? No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, I bought Uthic before they were cool.
The Crab Shack cannot be stopped. That's what we learned. I wish you would have been able to take it to Gen Con to see how the Crab Shack would have fared there. But
me too. But we are planning to go to Worlds in November, so we'll see how that goes.
Oh, nice. That's crazy. Is that up in Minnesota?
Yeah, that's gonna be at the Fantasy Flight Center.
That's awesome. Cool. So our last question is, what is your current overall favorite of all time tabletop game? It's a hard question.
That's an incredibly difficult question.
Is there something that just like speaks to you as like the tabletop game?
So I'm tempted to cheat and say the adventure role-playing game by White Wolf.
I mean, that's totally cool.
It's to me the perfect blend of just enough mechanics to make things interesting, because I feel like what role-playing games really need is enough randomization that unexpected things can happen, but with the focus on the narrative. So you can always find a way to get done the thing that you need to get done by leveraging something about your character that's unique. But it's really cinematic, and it plays, and the mechanics don't get in your way, and you can literally make it a superhero game or a spy game or whatever you want, as long as it's a little bit pulpy. The system fits everything. So I think that probably is the game I've spent the most hours and had the most fun playing on the tabletop.
That's awesome. Yeah, I went to Gen Con, like, was it the week before last or whatever, but it's kind of interesting, like, role-playing games in general. Like, I go around, like, shooting videos with the Dice Tower, and we go around asking a bunch of people questions about gaming and things like that. And normally, on past years, like, I'd ask people questions, and they'd have lots of answers about, like, board games or board games they like, or board games are the things they're most excited about. Like, this year, it was so much role-playing stuff. So many people were there for role-playing. And I know Gen Con started as like a D&D thing, but
yes, it did.
Have you seen like an uptick in the interest in like role-playing games, and with Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition coming out or anything like that? Or what's your feel as far as like role-playing games compared to the rest of the tabletop industry?
You know, role-playing games are always in this really funny niche, because people do it a lot at home and we don't get to see as much of it here, but we've definitely noticed Adventurers League, which is the Wizards of the Coast organized play for 5th edition. Adventurers League has just come back with a vengeance here. They're requesting more tables every night of the week. People are getting into that all the time. We sell a ton of starter editions, like starter core books for D&D and Pathfinder, and then from there we can kind of try to branch people out into some of the more esoteric stuff. So and then you have companies like Bully Pulpit Games, which is local here in Chapel Hill, doing really cool stuff with things like Fiasco and Night Witches, which are single sitting games. Like, you sit down and you play them and you're done in the same night, which I think is a really interesting bridge for role-playing games, for that gateway of people who are like, I'm used to board games and I understand that, but you know, I'm not quite ready to go to this, I'm going to play with the same people for a year kind of scenario. So I think there's an opportunity right now for role-playing games with the resurgence of D&D.
Yeah,
100% agree. I also, to add to that, I think because board games are becoming so mainstream, like in the past, if somebody told me 10 years ago that they played D&D, my initial thoughts, and this is really terrible and judgmental, but I thought, so do you sleep in your mom's basement or your dad's basement? Like, okay, so you play D&D.
Rob, you're one of those guys.
Let me look at the back of your head. I want to see if you have a rat tail. And if you do, how long is your rat tail? Type of a thing. And I know it's terrible. But, like, because board games is becoming more mainstream, and we're seeing it more in just advertising and in more TV shows, and more people are getting into it, I think the nerdiness, and not that it's a bad word because it's not, but, you know, that extra level of nerdiness is starting to wash away. And maybe some of the players that were only board gamers are now getting into D&D. Like myself, I'm an example of that. 5 to 10 years ago, you asked me to play D&D, I'm like, bro, no.
It's too far down the rabbit hole.
I'll play this other game with you, but thank you, but no thank you. That's great. And now we're doing a campaign in D&D, and I absolutely love it. And I'm this.
We stream D&D live now once a month. On this channel.
That's awesome.
So, and we do it with people that Crystal is part of Board Game Blitz. She's all the way in Las Vegas, and we do it with Adam, who's currently here, or who was with us in chat. I don't know if he's chatted in a while, but he's in where's Adam at? Up north.
He's in Michigan, but right now he is at an outdoor ice cream event with his daughter.
Nice. Okay, yeah, I wanted to know exactly where he is currently. That's what I was looking for.
Sorry. Oh, he put it in chat earlier that he couldn't hear us. He was just typing. He would come in and out on the chat, typing in when he could.
Nice. But yeah, it's crazy to see how much board games have exploded, and the fact that like things like Stranger Things with like all the intros to D&D, people are like, oh man, it's cool because it's in like Netflix shows now, and Critical Role has all these amazing voice actors doing Twitch streams of D&D, and was it Sofia Vergara's husband? I don't remember his name, but he's like super.
He was in True Blood.
Yeah,
he's been in a bunch of other shows, but yeah, he has his own
he just did a
clothing line that came out for Death Saves.
Yeah.
That's the name of the clothing line for D&D stuff. But I mean, that just goes more to my point, and I think Stranger Things is a fantastic item to put up there as a catalyst to open it up for a lot of people. Because a lot of people watch that show, and it's becoming more like the nerd. The nerd is the hero now, right? Like before, everyone had to be the super jock. Growing up, you played sports, and if you didn't play sports, you were just like the nerd. But now it's cool to be the nerd. And
the nerd is more attainable, right? I mean, we all have that geeky side with the sort of hobby we're kind of embarrassed about or whatever. And I feel like it's great that the mainstream hero is turning to that sort of more introverted, contemplative person who isn't just good at everything.
Yeah.
Well, and also one thing in just America and the world is people are able now to more express themselves of who they truly are as an individual, I think, more than any other time in history. Where we're getting so many different people now where you're seeing where they're speaking their voice, where for years and years and years, they didn't speak their voice out of fear, whether that was a physical fear.
They're afraid they're going to get a swirly or shoved into a locker
or get beat up or get hurt or for whatever it was, for whatever reason. But we're seeing now, like, the world and the internet has helped a lot with this, where I can be who I am, and that's just who I am, and I don't have to run into this stereotype of fitting in this group. And so to go with you, JJ, I think more and more people are able to express that nerdy side of them, or to express that hobby side of them, and they realize this is actually really cool, and there's fun here, so.
Well, and to piggyback on that, I think that, we talk about what's the success factor for game stores. I think it's really important for game stores to be on the leading edge of that wave of inclusiveness.
Mm-hmm.
We want people to come out to game stores and be who they are and be enthusiastic and honest about their hobbies and their personalities. And we see some pushback on that sometimes in the gaming industry. We've had some rough history with Gamergate and some of the stuff that goes on at cons that's very exclusive, harassment, etc. And I think that good game stores are on the leading edge of pushing communities and inclusiveness and making sure that everybody feels like they have a place here.
Yeah. I definitely enjoy playing games with all sorts of different people, and it's really cool to be able to come together around a game and be able to enjoy that time together and just learn things from each other. So that's really super cool that Atomic is helping push, like, all sorts of people can come play games here, and hopefully those people that are leading those communities help feel those same ways.
Oh yeah, and you'd be surprised too, some of the people that you'd met or that you would meet that I have met over the years under that makeup. Like, and that's one thing that I'm happy that, like, of course we're always growing as individuals, and if you come up to me now and you have that rat tail, I don't think you stay in your parents' basement anymore or anything like that. I think you're just a normal individual.
I'm glad you're maturing, Rob.
I'm trying to, but you'd be surprised how many what society would consider somebody to be a very successful person is underneath all that makeup. how many doctors and lawyers and professional businessmen also like to express themselves, and they put on these costumes to be able to do that. So don't be so quick to judge a book by its cover. Just because they are in costume or they're expressing themselves doesn't mean that they're not a good citizen and they don't contribute to society. I've met a lot of people. I was like, I honestly would have no idea you worked with X and X company just based off the fact that you have a cat tail hanging out of your pants right now. No, I would have had no idea.
Are you
but I've had
specifically talking about furries now?
No, but you go to different cons or you go to different places or even some game stores where you see people, they're just comfortable in that environment and that's how they want to express themselves. And so, okay, cool. So I think it's great to meet new people.
Awesome.
So Atomic Empire, you can go with your rat tails and they'll still let you play their games there.
We will.
There's
certain attire we will ask you to turn inside out, but your rat tail is acceptable.
Rat tails.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I guess we're going to get close to wrapping this thing up. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about or promote before we shut this thing down?
I should probably have a list of upcoming events or something,
that'd
but
be awesome.
That would be smart. But you can find it on our website at atomicempire.com. We also have a really great Facebook group full of folks who, if you're looking to get into a game or you have questions or whatever, hop on our Facebook group. They are really, really helpful there. And gosh, yeah, please just come on out and visit us. If you haven't been in the place, come visit.
Yeah, you guys do events for like almost all the games, right? Because I know you do like almost all the Fantasy Flight organized play stuff. You do, of course, Magic and Warhammer, but you guys have just tons of events like HeroClix and all sorts of stuff all over the place.
If people want to play it, we will hold it.
That's awesome.
HeroClix is such a fun game. Man, we need to play that, Roy. It's been a minute since we played HeroClix.
Yeah, I played it with my brother when he was in town, but Scotty loves that game. It's just simple. Simple, rolling up and smashing some superhero faces.
You know what?
See, that's another appreciation for good stores, because Roy and I, a while ago, went on a rant about a particular store in our area. Guy was just being a jerk, and he was there trying to buy some HeroClix stuff. Stupid people.
Here's what I don't get about HeroClix, though, or what I can't wrap my head around. HeroClix has been out for so many years. How do I even know where to start building a team?
see, I've gone past that to where I just casually have like well-known heroes and just put them in a box, and when we play, they have point values on them like you would in any other miniatures game, but we just draft from like my collection and are like, okay, well, we'll play with these guys.
Okay, so it's you basically have your unlimited format. I think
basically
that's great. That's a good way to go.
And we just do it super casual whenever we play. But I think they have rotation like Magic and stuff does in the actual tournament format as well. So I think you can only play with certain amount of stuff, you know?
Oh, that makes sense.
So I think most of those style games that are collectible have to go that route eventually, or else they won't be able to gain any new players, which is super rough because it hurts the people that bought all the old stuff too. So
sort of, but it's kind of nice when it forces you to play with some new stuff. Like you may have had your stuff that was really, really effective, but when it cycles out, you have to look at the game a different way.
I mean, honestly, I played Magic a ton, and there was a local store. We have decent sized Magic stores here, but we don't have stores that have like any other tabletop games. But I used to play in tournaments a store that had like 80 some people to show up, and I was getting to the point where I could win Friday Night Magic and stuff. But then set rotation happened, and I started buying back a deck, and I got to the point where I'm like, that Planeswalker cost $50, and I need a play set. And most of my friends had like fallen out with set rotation, and set rotation rotated me out, basically.
Magic has spent years trying to get the frequency of set rotation right, because it's a fine line between encouraging people to try new things and just breaking their wallets on the cycling cards.
Yep, and I basically traded all in for board games and haven't really looked back. I'll play EDH occasionally because that's fun, but, you know. Good times. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. If you guys are ever in the North Carolina area, make sure to check out Atomic Empire in Durham. Definitely worth stopping by. Thanks so much for coming on the show, JJ.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a great time.
Absolutely.
Awesome. We stream these Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time at youtube.com/Epic Gaming Night. I want to say thank you so much to all of our amazing patrons out there that help support the show. If you'd like to support Epic Gaming Night, make sure to check us out at patreon.com/Epic Gaming Night. Make sure to check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Epic Gaming Night. We're posting things that we're excited about in tabletop gaming, the new games we're playing. I just got back from Gen Con and posted a million pictures of all the things I saw at Gen Con. So make sure to check out at Epic Gaming Night. And also make sure to check out our review videos and Favorite Game Friday over on the Dice Tower on YouTube. Awesome. Thanks so much, everybody in chat. It's been a lot of fun.
Yes.
Thanks again.
Peace.
Peace.